The first time Ianthe Voss heard the servants call her husband Your Grace, she thought the world had made a mistake. The carriage had stopped before iron gates so tall they seemed made for giants. Beyond them, a long avenue of black yews climbed toward a house of honey-colored stone, wide as a village, glowing in the last gold of evening. Windows burned like candles across 3 floors. A fountain shone in the courtyard. Liveried footmen stood upon the steps in 2 perfect lines. Every lamp had been lit. Every door stood open. And the man beside her, the man she had married 3 hours earlier, in a chapel so small the rain had come through the roof. The man she had known as Mr. Peregrine Avelard, a quiet tutor, with a frayed cuff and ink on his thumb, sat very still. Ianthe looked at the house, then at him. "Peregrine," she whispered, "why have we stopped here?" He did not answer at once. His hand closed around the worn book of poetry he always carried, the same book from which he had once read to her in her father's neglected library, the same book he had pressed into her hands after their vows, as though it were the only wedding gift he owned. The carriage door opened. A silver-haired butler descended the steps, bowed so low his white hair nearly touched his knee, and said in a voice that carried over the silent courtyard, "Welcome home, Your Grace." The servants bowed, all of them, not to Ianthe, to the tutor. Only then did she understand that the man she had married to escape ruin was not poor at all. He was not a tutor. He was not even Mr. Avelard, not in the way she had believed. He was Peregrine Avelard, 9th Duke of Carrowmere, one of the richest and most guarded men in England. And she, Ianthe Voss, unwanted stepdaughter, unpaid housekeeper, almost sold bride, had become a duchess before she even knew she had married a duke. She should have been angry. Later, she would be. She should have demanded the truth. Later, she would demand every piece of it. But in that first moment, standing at the open carriage door with the rain drying on her plain gray traveling dress, and the whole grand household bowing before her, Ianthe could think of only one thing. If he was a duke, then her stepmother could not reach her. And that thought, terrible and beautiful together, was the first breath she had taken in years. Before we go on, if you enjoy long, slow, gentle stories to fall asleep to, do one small kindness for me now. At the very beginning, tap subscribe and tell me in the comments which city you are listening from tonight. It helps this little channel more than you can know, and I love to imagine all the quiet rooms this story is drifting into. Now dim your lamp, settle deep into your pillow, and let us begin properly. In the spring of 1819, the old Voss house at Briarwick Square had the tired look of a place that had once expected better things and had long since stopped asking for them. Its shutters needed paint. Its roof let in water over the back stairs. The silver had been sold in small secret pieces over 4 years. First the candlesticks no one used, then the sugar tongs, then a tray Ianthe remembered from childhood because her mother had once set violets upon it. The drawing room curtains were still grand from a distance, but if you stood near enough, you could see where the sun had eaten the silk, thin as onion skin. Everything in the house was like that, respectable from the street, fading when touched. Ianthe was 22, and she had become, without anyone naming it, the thing that held the house together. She rose before the maids, because there were too few maids now, and the ones remaining were young, frightened, and underfed. She checked the accounts. She watered the herbs in the cracked pots behind the kitchen. She mended her father's cuffs and copied his letters when his hand shook too badly to write. She stretched tea leaves twice, and sometimes 3 times. She knew which tradesman would wait and which would shout. She knew how to speak gently to debt and firmly to hunger. She knew how to hide worry from a sick man and how to bow her head when her stepmother wanted something to strike. Lady Dorcas Voss had been beautiful once, in a hard, bright way, like a jewel in a ring too tight for the finger. She had married Ianthe's father when Ianthe was 14, and had discovered, within a year, that Sir Osric Voss was not rich enough to satisfy her, and not strong enough to defy her. Disappointment had soured her beauty. Now she moved through the fading house in lavender silk and anger, always scented, always powdered, always watching Ianthe with the cold impatience of a woman who sees an unpaid servant where others might see a daughter. "You have ink on your sleeve again," Lady Dorcas said one morning, not looking up from the small mirror in her hand. Ianthe glanced down. A blue smudge marked the cuff of her plain muslin dress. "I was copying Father's letters." "Your father has no letters worth copying. Men who cannot pay their accounts ought not correspond." Ianthe folded the letter and set it aside. "He is writing to Mr. Thistlewade about the old annuity. If the papers can be found, there may be something owed." "There is nothing owed," said Lady Dorcas. "Not to this house, not to your father, certainly not to you." Ianthe said nothing. Silence was often the cheapest answer. Lady Dorcas snapped the mirror shut. "Lord Queon comes at 4. The room seemed to cool. Ianthe looked up. "Lord Queon, the same. Do not play stupid. It does not suit you, though little else does. He is nearly 60. He is 57. He frightened the maid last month. The maid was impertinent. He has buried 2 wives, and is therefore experienced in marriage," Lady Dorcas said. "You are not pretty enough to be delicate about offers, Ianthe. You are not young enough to be coy. You have no fortune, no useful connections, no charm, and no mother living to persuade anyone that you are more than you appear. Lord Queon is willing to overlook these deficiencies." Ianthe's hands had gone cold on the edge of the desk. "I have not received an offer from Lord Queon." Lady Dorcas smiled. It was never a good sign when she smiled. "You will." "I will not accept him." The smile sharpened. "You will accept what saves this family." "What saves you, you mean?" For one breath, the room was silent. Then Lady Dorcas stood. She did not shout. Shouting would have been warmer. "Listen to me carefully, girl. Your father's debts are larger than you know. This house is mortgaged. The servants are owed wages. The coal merchant has threatened to stop delivery. Lord Queon has offered to settle every account upon marriage. Every account. He asks only a wife, who will be grateful and quiet. You are well practiced at quiet. My father would never agree. Your father signs what is put before him. He always has." That was true enough to wound. Ianthe rose too quickly, knocking the chair leg against the floor. "I will speak to him." "You will do no such thing. He is sleeping." "Then I will wake him." Lady Dorcas stepped between her and the door. "You will stay here. Wash the ink from your sleeve. Put on the blue gown that almost flatters you, and receive Lord Queon with humility." The blue gown had belonged to Ianthe's mother. "No," Ianthe said. It was a small word, but it seemed to astonish both of them. Ianthe had said no many times inside herself. No while pouring tea. No while listening to insults. No while signing away little pieces of comfort to keep her father from knowing how far they had fallen. But she had rarely spoken it aloud, and never like this. Lady Dorcas stared at her. "What did you say?" "I said no." The slap came quick and flat across her cheek. Ianthe's head turned with it. Her face burned. Her eyes watered, but she did not cry. Crying had always given Lady Dorcas too much satisfaction. "You will learn," said her stepmother softly, "that a woman without money does not get to say no." And perhaps that would have been the end of Ianthe Voss. Not death, not exactly, but the slow burial of a living heart inside a house where kindness had gone missing. Lord Queon would come. Her father would be made to sign. Lady Dorcas would call it necessity. Society would call it a good arrangement for a plain girl with no dowry. And Ianthe, who had spent years saving everyone else in small invisible ways, would be handed over, like the last piece of silver, from a dining room sideboard. Except that, at 2:30 that same afternoon, a quiet tutor came to the library to return a book of poetry, and saw the red mark on her cheek. Mr. Peregrine Avelard had been in the house for 6 weeks. He had come by way of Sir Osric's old acquaintance, Mr. Bellwether of Finch Lane, who had written that he knew a respectable scholar in need of temporary work. Sir Osric, who no longer had children young enough to need tutoring, and no money to pay a tutor properly, had nevertheless agreed, because he liked books. Loneliness had made him trusting, and Mr. Avell had offered to catalogue the old library for almost nothing. Lady Dorcas had laughed when he arrived. "A tutor without pupils," she said. "How very appropriate for this house. We collect useless things now." Peregrine had bowed with perfect calm. "Madam, useless things are often only waiting for the correct use." Ianthe had liked him from that moment, though she had told herself liking was a luxury she could not afford. He was not handsome, in the easy, polished way of men who practiced being admired. His coat was plain and a little worn at the cuff. His dark hair refused neatness when he had been reading too long. He had a scholar's hands, ink-marked, long-fingered, careful with paper, and careless with himself. His face, when at rest, was grave almost to sternness. But when he read something that pleased him, the sternness altered, and there came into his eyes a warmth so sudden and private that Ianthe sometimes looked away, feeling she had seen something not meant for her. He spent his mornings in the library, sorting the surviving volumes, making lists, tying loose papers with ribbon. In the afternoons, if Sir Osric was well enough, he read to him. In the evenings, he sometimes passed Ianthe in the corridor and gave her a bow that treated her not as Lady Dorcas treated her, not as a servant, not as a burden, not as a problem to be solved, but as a person fully present in the world. That alone was dangerous. On the day Lord Quillan was expected, Ianthe had fled to the library because it was the one room Lady Dorcas disliked. The books smelled of dust, leather, and old rain. The fire was small. Outside, spring pressed pale green fingers against the window glass. Peregrine stood at the long table with a book open under one hand. But when she entered, he did not look at the book. He looked at her face. "Who struck you?" he asked. No one else would have asked so directly. Not in that house. Not in any polite house. The question was indecent because it assumed that pain should be named. Ianthe put her hand to her cheek. "It is nothing." That is a word people use when they mean they are not permitted to say what something is. She tried to smile. It failed. "You are very philosophical for a man cataloguing moldy sermons." "I dislike moldy sermons. I dislike evasions more." His voice softened. "Miss Voss." The kindness in it undid her more nearly than cruelty had. She looked down at the table. There, beside his hand, lay a small book bound in green leather. The corners were rubbed pale. A narrow strip of blue ribbon marked the place. She had seen him carry it often. "Lord Quillan is coming," she said. Peregrine went very still. "Lady Dorcas says he will offer for me. She says my father's debts will be settled if I accept. And will you?" "No." The answer came more quickly than she expected. It steadied her. "No," she said again. "But I do not know what no is worth without money behind it." His eyes did not leave her face. "More than most people think. Not in this house." "Then leave this house." A laugh escaped her, small and bitter. "To go where?" "Anywhere that does not sell you." "You say that like anywhere is a place." "It can be. Not for women without fortune." He closed the green book gently. "There are ways." She looked at him then. Really looked. "Mr. Avell, you are kind, and I know you mean to comfort me. But you are a tutor, with one coat and no pupils. If you know a secret road out of poverty, I should be very glad to hear it." For the first time since she had known him, he looked away. That should have warned her. "There is one way," he said. "What way?" He was silent so long she thought he had regretted speaking. Then he said, "Marriage." She almost laughed again. "That is the prison door, not the road out. Not always. For me, today, it is. Not if the husband were not Lord Quillan." Her heartbeat changed. She could feel it, suddenly, like a knock inside her ribs. "Mr. Avell, I have no right to say this," he said. "I know that. I have no right to offer what would sound, to any sensible woman, like another form of desperation. But if Lord Quillan comes today, your stepmother will close every door. If you are married before he can make his bargain, the bargain dies." "To whom?" she whispered. He met her eyes. The room seemed very quiet. Somewhere in the wall, a pipe ticked. Rain began at the window, soft at first, then stronger. "You," she said, "I would ask nothing of you that you did not freely give. Not affection, not obedience, not any of the rights men are so fond of claiming, as though a vow makes them decent. I would give you my name, such protection as I have, and distance from this house. In return, I would ask only that you permit me to see you safe." She stared at him. "You are offering to marry me, out of pity." "No." "What then?" He looked at the book under his hand. His thumb rested on the worn cover, over the place where the leather had been rubbed smooth by years of use. "Out of recognition," he said. "I know what it is to be trapped in a life arranged by people who do not see you. I know what it is to have a name used as a cage. You think I am offering rescue because you are helpless. I am not. I am offering alliance because you have been holding up a collapsing house with your bare hands, and everyone in it has mistaken your strength for duty." No one had ever said anything like that to Ianthe before. It was foolish. It was impossible. It was improper beyond language. She knew almost nothing about him. A woman could ruin herself by running from one dangerous arrangement into another. Yet as she looked at Peregrine Avelard in the dying light of the library, with ink on his thumb and sincerity making his grave face almost stern, she felt the shape of the choice before her. Lord Quillan at 4, or the tutor before 3. "What life could you offer?" she asked. "A modest one," he said. Too quickly. Again, it should have warned her. "I have some family obligation in the north," he continued. "A house where you would be safe. You would have your own room, your own money, your own decisions. If, after a year, you wish to live separately, I would not prevent it. I would arrange it. Why would you do this?" His answer was quiet. "Because 6 weeks ago, I came into this house to examine old books and found a woman no one thanked for keeping the roof over them. Because yesterday, I watched you give the last orange to a kitchen maid who was crying from hunger and then pretend you did not like oranges. Because when your father repeats the same story twice, you listen both times as if it were new. Because your stepmother looks at you and sees something to spend, and I look at you and see someone who should have been cherished." Ianthe turned away, because she was very close to tears. "That is not love," she said. "No," he said, "but it is respect. Love built without respect is only appetite wearing perfume. Respect may be enough to begin with." The clock in the hall struck 2:15. In 1 hour and 15 minutes, Lord Quillan would arrive. Ianthe placed both hands flat on the library table and breathed once. Twice. "If I say yes," she said, "we must leave now." Peregrine did not move, but something in his eyes shifted, something like pain and relief together. "Yes, my father. I will write to him, or you may. We will not tell your stepmother until it is done. She will say I have been stolen. You are not furniture. She will say I was compromised. Then I will say I married you. She will say you trapped me for my connection to this house. Your connection to this house appears to consist of debt, damp, and cruelty. I shall withstand the accusation." Against all sense, Ianthe smiled. It was small, it trembled, but it was real. Peregrine saw it, and for one unguarded second, his face changed so completely that she saw, beneath the plain tutor, the outline of another man, one used to command, one hiding more than poverty. Then the look was gone. He pushed the green book toward her. "Take this," he said. "Why?" "A wedding gift, if you decide to come." She opened the cover. On the first page, written in dark, elegant ink, was a name she did not understand. Peregrine Avelard. Not Avel, the plain name by which he had entered her father's house. Avelard. Longer, older, heavier somehow, as though one small word had suddenly unfolded into a locked door. She frowned. "Your name is written wrong." "No," he said softly, "only shortened." Before she could ask what that meant, footsteps sounded in the corridor. Lady Dorcas calling for her. Lord Quillan expected, the house tightening around her like a fist. Ianthe closed the book. "Then let us go," she said. They were married, in the chapel of St. Elian's on Ashbarrow Lane, a narrow old place wedged between a print shop and a shuttered apothecary, with rain ticking through a crack above the south window, and a clerk who kept looking from the bride to the groom, as though trying to decide which of them had lost their senses first. Ianthe wore the plain gray dress she had been wearing when she left the house. She had no gloves, because one had a hole in the palm, and the other had vanished months ago. Her bonnet was crooked from the wind. She carried Peregrine's green book because she had no flowers, and because, absurdly, holding it made her less afraid. Peregrine stood beside her, grave and pale. If he regretted what they were doing, he did not show it. His voice did not falter over the vows. His hand, when he placed the ring upon her finger, was cold. The ring surprised her. It was not new. It was narrow gold, worn smooth with age, too finely made to belong to a poor tutor. It fit her perfectly. She looked up at him. He said only, "It was my mother's." Something moved in her chest. The vicar pronounced them man and wife. No bells rang. No family cheered. No friend threw petals. The clerk signed his name and asked for the fee. Peregrine paid with a banknote folded so quickly Ianthe barely saw it. That, too, should have warned her. Poor tutors did not carry banknotes of that size. But shock and fear had narrowed her attention. She was married. That fact filled the chapel like thunder. She was no longer Ianthe Voss, unmarried daughter in a house that had used her up. She was Ianthe Avelard, wife to a man she had known 6 weeks, bound by law before God and witnesses, safer perhaps, ruined perhaps, free perhaps. The 3 words felt almost the same. Outside, the rain had thickened. A carriage waited, not a hired hack, as she had expected, but a well-sprung dark carriage with no crest upon the door. The horses were glossy and restless. The driver touched his hat when Peregrine appeared. Ianthe stopped on the chapel step. "This is yours?" in a manner of speaking. What manner? The practical manner. Peregrine. It was the first time she had used his given name. They both heard it. His expression softened, then shuddered again. "There are things I must tell you. I know that. I ask only that you let me tell them, when we are away from London and beyond your stepmother's immediate reach." That sounds like the sort of sentence that contains more trouble than comfort. It contains both. She studied him in the rain. Have I married a criminal? No. A debtor? No. A spy? That almost made him smile. Not today. That is not reassuring. I am sorry. It struck her that he meant it. Not lightly. Not as a courtesy. He looked, in that moment, like a man standing under a weight he had chosen, but not yet confessed. The chapel door opened behind them. The vicar coughed. The clerk peered out with open curiosity. In Briarwick Square, Lady Dorcas would soon discover Ianthe gone. Lord Quillan would arrive to find no bride to buy. There was no time for answers. Ianthe lifted her skirts and stepped into the carriage. Peregrine followed. For the first hour they spoke little. London thinned around them. Wet streets gave way to hedgerows, then fields, then the long northern road. The rain softened to mist. Ianthe held the green book in her lap, turning the ring on her finger. Peregrine sat opposite, not beside her, as though distance were another promise. At last she said, "Where are we going?" "Carrowmere." "Is that a town? A house? Your family obligation?" "Yes." "Who lives there?" He looked out the window. "Too many ghosts." She almost smiled. "Are they respectable ghosts? Very grand, very opinionated. Do they approve of sudden marriages?" "No." "Then I shall have something in common with them." That did make him smile, and again the transformation startled her. He was not a different man when he smiled. He was the same man with a door opened. The green book slid as the carriage turned. She caught it, and the cover fell open to the first page again. Peregrine Avelard. There it was once more. Not Mr. Avil, the quiet tutor. Avelard. A name with another room hidden inside it. "Why did you shorten your name?" she asked. He looked at the book, then at her. "I wanted to know who I was when no one heard the whole of it." It was a strange answer. Not false, she thought, but not complete. And did you find out? His gaze rested on her face. Not until recently. She looked down quickly. The words had been too soft. Evening lowered slowly over the road. They stopped once at an inn, where Peregrine ordered tea and bread and a private parlor, and the landlord treated him with a deference too deep for a tutor. Ianthe noticed. She noticed the quality of his watch when he checked the hour. She noticed that the driver never asked where to turn. She noticed that Peregrine had not once seemed uncertain of the route. Suspicion gathered like weather. "Peregrine," she said when they were back in the carriage, "are you rich?" He closed his eyes briefly, as though the question had struck him. "Yes," he said. One simple word. A door opening over a cliff. Ianthe stared at him. "Very?" she asked. "Yes." "How very?" "Ianthe, that is not an answer." "No." "Are you gentry?" "Yes." "More than gentry?" Silence. Her heart began to beat hard again. "Peregrine." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, the fading light catching the severe line of his face. "I should have told you before the vows. There is no defense for that, except that there was no time, and I feared, if I told you, you would think the offer another trap, a richer trap, a grander one. I told myself I would get you away first and ask forgiveness after. It was arrogant. I know that. What are you?" He did not answer quickly enough. The carriage slowed. Outside, iron gates appeared through the mist. Tall gates, impossibly tall. On the stone pillars, carved deep and old, was a crest. A hawk with wings spread above a tower. Ianthe looked from the crest to Peregrine. His face had gone still with a kind of dread. The gates opened. The carriage rolled through. The avenue seemed endless. Black yews stood on either side, clipped into solemn shapes, their wet branches shining in the dusk. Beyond them lay parkland, silvered with rain, and beyond that, rising out of mist and spring darkness, Carrowmere House. It was not a house, not in the way Briarwick Square had been a house. It was a world of stone. 2 wings stretched from a central hall, crowned by tall chimneys. Lamps glowed in rows. The windows reflected the last of the sky. A broad flight of steps led up to doors carved with the same hawk and tower as the gate. Servants stood waiting in 2 lines beneath the portico, their dark livery edged in silver. Ianthe could not breathe properly. The carriage stopped. "Peregrine," she whispered. "Why are they standing like that?" He said her name once, just her name. It sounded like an apology. The door opened. The silver-haired butler bowed. "Welcome home, Your Grace." The words went through the courtyard like a bell. "Your Grace." The servants bowed. Ianthe sat frozen, one hand on the poetry book, the other on the ring that had belonged to his mother. Peregrine stepped down first. He turned and held out his hand. For a moment, she did not take it. His eyes met hers. There was no command in them, no expectation that she perform gratitude before his household. Only regret, and something like fear. She took his hand because falling from the carriage would be a poor beginning to duchesshood. The moment her feet touched the ground, the butler bowed to her too. "Your Grace," he said. Ianthe almost turned to see who stood behind her. Peregrine's hand tightened gently around hers. "Mrs. Valchester," he said to a tall housekeeper with iron gray hair. "This is my wife, Her Grace the Duchess of Carrowmere." A ripple moved through the servants. Surprise, certainly, curiosity, but no disrespect. Each bowed or curtsied in turn. Duchess. The word was too large for her. It did not fit over the plain gray dress, the damp hem, the ink stain at her cuff. It did not fit the girl who counted candles and stretched soup and knew which floorboards creaked outside Lady Dorcas's room. Ianthe pulled her hand free. "May I speak with you privately?" she said. Peregrine inclined his head. Of course. His calm almost undid her temper. They entered the house. The hall of Carrowmere was vast and warm, floored in black and white stone, lit by a chandelier holding what seemed like 100 candles. Portraits watched from the walls. A fire big enough to roast an ox burned at the far end. The air smelled of beeswax, cedar, and rain drying on old stone. Ianthe saw none of it clearly. Peregrine led her through a side door into a smaller room lined with books. Of course, she thought wildly. Even as a duke, he found the nearest library. The door closed. She turned on him. You are a duke. Yes, not a tutor. I have taught. Do not insult me with cleverness. He accepted that with a slight bow of the head. You are right. You married me under a false name. No, a shortened one. But that is no defense. You let me believe you were poor. Yes, you let me stand in a chapel thinking I was taking on poverty with you, thinking I knew at least the size of the risk, and all the while you were this. She gestured helplessly at the room, the house, the impossible weight of it. Yes, he said again. Stop agreeing, as though agreement repairs anything. I do not know how to repair it. Truth would have been a start. His face tightened. Yes. She walked to the fire, then away from it. She could not be still. Why? Why pretend to be a tutor in my father's library? Why offer marriage like a man with nothing but decency when you had all this? He was silent. Ianthe laughed once, without humor. Ah, so we have reached the part you will not tell. No, he said. I will tell you. I owe you that much, and more. 3 years ago, my elder brother died. He had been duke before me. He left no son. The title came to me, along with the estate, the fortune, the debts no one admits great houses have, the cousins who wanted pieces, the women who wanted the coronet, and the advisers who spoke of marriage as though I were a horse, requiring a suitable mare. Ianthe folded her arms tightly. I was told to marry well, he continued, meaning richly, meaning advantageously, meaning someone trained from birth to sit in a room like this and pretend not to be lonely. I tried to do my duty. I attended balls. I allowed introductions. I listened to women praise books they had never read because someone told them I liked poetry. I watched mothers push daughters at me as if the girls were offerings to a household god, and I began to understand that no one in my life knew whether I was a man or only a title wearing a coat. So you hid. Yes, as a tutor. My mother's family name was Avel. I used part of it. I took work no one would connect to me. Old houses, old books, temporary catalogs. I wanted to know how people spoke when they did not know a duke was listening. And in my house, his eyes lifted to hers. In your house, I found you. The anger in her chest did not vanish. It changed shape, which was more dangerous. Do not make me the explanation. You are not the explanation for the lie. You are the reason I stopped wanting to live inside it. She looked away. Outside, the rain touched the library window in soft fingers. Was any of it true? She asked. Anything you said in the library? All of it. You would have given me a modest life? No. She looked back sharply. I would have given you safety, he said. Freedom. Your own money. Your own room. Your own decisions. All of that was true. But not modesty. I lied by omission there. And if I choose to leave? Pain crossed his face quickly. Then I will arrange a separate establishment. Your name will remain protected. Your stepmother and Lord Quion will have no claim on you. You will have an income of your own. No one will compel you to stay at Carrowmere. She believed him. That was the trouble. If he had been cruel, anger would have carried her cleanly. If he had been smug, she could have hated him. But he stood before her like a man awaiting sentence, not defending himself, not asking gratitude, not using the power he had hidden. Why marry me, she said, truly. Because you needed escape before 4 o'clock. That is not enough for a lifetime. No. What else? He looked at her for a long moment. Because I could not bear the thought of you being handed to Quion. Because I respected you. Because every day in your library I found some new reason to remain another day. Because when you smiled over the foolish note I made about your father's dreadful Latin Bible, I thought of it the next morning before I was fully awake. Because I am not a romantic man, Ianthe, but I know when a house has light in it, and you were the only light in that one. Her throat tightened. She hated him a little for saying it so gently. You should have told me. Yes, I may forgive you. I hope so. Not tonight. I understand. I want my own room. It has been prepared. Of course it has. A faint, sad humor touched his mouth. Dukes are very efficient when they are behaving badly. She almost smiled. She refused herself the satisfaction. He crossed to the desk and took up a small bell. Then he paused. May I ask one thing? You may ask. I may refuse. Keep the poetry book for now. She looked down. She had forgotten she still held it. Why? Because there is one truth in it I did not hide. She opened the cover again. Peregrine Avelard. Beneath the name, in smaller writing she had not noticed in the carriage, was a line. For the woman who once chose the man before she knew the name. The date below it was that morning. Her anger faltered. She closed the book. Good night, Your Grace, she said, because she knew it would wound him. It did. He bowed anyway. Good night, Ianthe. By morning, Carrowmere had learned 3 things about its new duchess. She had arrived without trunks. She had married the Duke in secret, and she was not dazzled enough by grandeur to stop counting the cost of it. Mrs. Valchester, meaning to be kind, had ordered 6 fires lit in the Duchess's rooms and 24 candles placed in every corner of the dressing chamber, sitting room, and bedchamber. Ianthe woke to such brightness that for one confused moment she thought the house had caught fire. Every morning? She asked the maid. If Your Grace wishes, said Lynette, who looked young enough to still be astonished by furniture. Then Her Grace does not wish, Ianthe said, sitting up. 1 fire, unless the day is bitter. 4 candles in the evening. 2 in the morning, if it is dark. None, when the sun is doing the work for free. By luncheon, the housekeeper knew the Duchess had asked to see the household accounts. By tea, the steward knew she had found an error in the coal tally. By dinner, Mr. Orphan knew she had sent the untouched fruit from the breakfast table to the kitchen maids. Servants do not love quickly. They observe first. They test. But Carrowmere's servants had served enough grand ladies to know the difference between kindness performed for praise and kindness done because a person cannot bear to see waste or hunger. By the second night, they were not yet loyal to the Duchess, but they were watching her with interest. Peregrine watched too, though from a distance. He gave her the distance she had asked for. At breakfast he bowed. In corridors he stepped aside. In the library he addressed her with perfect courtesy and did not once presume on the word wife. This annoyed her more than presumption would have. On the 3rd morning she found him in the blue library, standing on a ladder with his coat off and a cracked volume under one arm. You have servants, she said. I do. And yet you are climbing ladders. The book was in danger. Of what? Neglect. Against her will, she almost smiled. He came down and set the volume on the table. The green poetry book lay nearby. She had brought it without thinking, which irritated her further. Mrs. Valchester says you reorganized the candle orders, he said. Mrs. Valchester speaks too much. Mrs. Valchester governs an army. She must speak, or we all perish. Your chandlers are robbing you. I suspected as much. Then why did you not stop it? Because I did not know the price of candles. She looked at him, startled. That is not a joke, he said. I know the annual income of the North Farms, the cost of repairing Locksmere Bridge, and the rent due from every tenant on the western edge. But I did not know what a kitchen candle should cost. Great houses leak money through holes gentlemen are trained not to see. Briarwick leaked too, Ianthe said. But when a poor house leaks, everyone can hear the dripping. Something in his face changed. Did you sleep? Enough. Did you eat? Yes. Are you still angry? Yes. Good. Good? It means you feel safe enough to be angry. That silenced her. She looked down at the poetry book. I found your inscription. I wondered when you would. It was manipulative. Yes. Unfair. Yes. Beautiful. He did not answer. Read me something, she said, then immediately wished she had not. He took the book carefully. I am still angry, she warned. I would never mistake poetry for forgiveness. He read one short verse only, about a traveler coming at dusk to a house where one lamp had been left burning. His voice was low, steady, and unadorned. When he finished, she said, You read well. You sound resentful. I am. You are making it difficult to remain only angry. That was when the first warning came. The library door opened before he could answer. Mr. Orphan stood there, face carved from stone, and behind him was a groom from the village, cap twisted nearly shapeless in his hands. "Your Grace," said the butler, "a man has been asking questions at the posting inn." Peregrine closed the poetry book. "What kind of questions?" The groom swallowed. "Whether a young lady arrived here without trunks, whether she looked frightened, whether your Grace seemed pleased with her, whether the marriage was true." The room went cold. Ianthe's hand tightened on the back of the chair. "Dorcas." "Not Dorcas herself," said Peregrine. "Not yet. A scout." "A scout," Ianthe repeated, "for the weak place." The words struck harder than a shout. For 3 days she had almost believed Carrowmere's walls were thick enough to keep Briarwick out. Now she saw that cruelty did not need a key. It only needed a rumor, a servant's loose tongue, a lawyer's letter, a man asking questions at an inn. Peregrine turned to Mr. Orphan. "No servant speaks to strangers about her Grace. No caller is admitted without my knowledge. Send a rider to London for Mr. Bellwether. Tell him I need every sample of her Grace's hand he can lawfully obtain from Briarwick, and tell him to come prepared to swear to what he sees." Ianthe looked at him. "Bellwether? The man who sent you to my father's library?" "The same. He is not merely a dealer in old books. He authenticates manuscripts for half the collectors in London. If your stepmother means to use paper, we will answer with paper." Only then did Ianthe understand the shape of the danger. Lady Dorcas would not drag her bodily back to Briarwick. She would do something worse. She would make Ianthe appear grasping, false, ungrateful, promised to one man and bought by another. She would turn rescue into scandal. Peregrine saw the fear cross her face and did not touch her without permission. "Ianthe, she knows," Ianthe said. "She suspects. And when she is certain," he closed the green book and laid one hand over it like a vow. "Then she will come, and this time you will not meet her alone." But spring thaws are dangerous. They loosen not only flowers, but buried things. And in London, Lady Dorcas Voss had discovered that her stepdaughter had vanished, married, and become far more valuable than anyone had imagined. Lady Dorcas arrived at Carrowmere 11 days after the wedding, dressed in black silk as if attending a funeral, and smiling as if she had caused one. She did not come alone. Beside her in the carriage sat Lord Quion, heavy-jowled, pale-eyed, his mouth tucked into an expression of injured dignity. Behind them rode a thin solicitor named Mr. Sallowby, whose nose looked sharp enough to open letters by itself. The three of them reached the house just after noon, when Ianthe and Peregrine were in the morning room, reviewing a tenant petition about flooded pasture. Mr. Orphan entered with a face carved from professional stone. "Your Grace," he said to Peregrine, "Lady Dorcas Voss requests an audience. She is accompanied by Lord Quion and a legal gentleman." Ianthe's hand froze over the paper. Peregrine saw. "You do not have to see them." "Yes," she said, "I do." "No." She looked at him. He corrected himself at once. "Forgive me. I mean, you need not face them before you are ready." "I will never be ready." "That is not the same as being unable." His expression softened with respect so clear it almost steadied her. "Then we receive them together," he said. Lady Dorcas entered the drawing room as if she owned its air. Her eyes swept over the curtains, the carpets, the portraits, the silver tea service, and finally Ianthe, who stood beside the fireplace in a simple gown of moss-green wool. "My dear child," she said, "what a distress you have caused." The voice was honey. The eyes were knives. Ianthe curtsied. "Lady Dorcas." "Lady Dorcas?" Her stepmother pressed a gloved hand to her breast. How formal. After all my worry. Lord Quion looked Ianthe over in a way that made Peregrine take one quiet step closer. Lady Dorcas noticed. Of course she noticed. "And your Grace," she said, turning to Peregrine with a curtsy so deep it mocked itself. "What an honor. I confess, when my poor stepdaughter fled with a household tutor, I did not imagine she had trapped a duke." "Ianthe trapped no one," Peregrine said. "How loyal. Newlyweds are charming. Mr. Sallowby unfolded a paper. Your Grace, we come in the hope of resolving a regrettable irregularity. Do you? The marriage between yourself and Miss Voss, Duchess of Carrowmere, Peregrine said. The solicitor blinked. Yes, quite. The marriage was contracted under circumstances that raise concerns. What concerns? Her family was not informed. She is of age. Her father did not consent. She is of age. She had, we are given to understand, a prior understanding with Lord Quioin. Ianthe's stomach turned. I had no such understanding, she said. Lord Quioin gave a wet little sigh. My dear young lady, distress has made you confused. Your stepmother will confirm that the matter was all but settled. Between you and Lady Dorcas. Not with me. Lady Dorcas laughed softly. You see how she speaks now, Your Grace. This is not the girl I raised. She was obedient before she fell under unsuitable influence. Peregrine's voice cooled. If obedience means willingness to be sold, I am glad she lost the habit. The room sharpened. Lady Dorcas's smile thinned. Take care, Your Grace. Romance is charming, but law is less sentimental. Mr. Sallowby. The solicitor held out the paper. There exists a signed memorandum, witnessed, stating that Miss Voss consented to marry Lord Quioin in exchange for settlement of family debts. We do not claim this paper can simply erase a marriage already made, Your Grace, but it can do damage. It can suggest deception. It can suggest that the young lady broke a solemn promise to one gentleman in order to secure a richer one. It can make a scandal large enough that a private settlement may become the wisest course. Ianthe stared at the paper. I signed nothing. Lady Dorcas turned her pitying smile upon her. You signed many household papers, child. You never were careful about reading what your father placed before you. Peregrine looked at Ianthe. Did you sign anything recently? Accounts, letters, a receipt for coal, father's correspondence. Nothing about marriage. Mr. Sallowby tapped the document. The signature is clear. Peregrine took the paper. He read it once. His face gave nothing away. Then he handed it to Ianthe. Her name sat at the bottom. Ianthe Voss. Her handwriting, or close enough to chill her. Above it, in smooth legal phrases, was consent. Lord Quioin. Debts settled. Marriage to be solemnized. The room tilted. I did not sign this, she whispered. Lady Dorcas sighed. Denial is natural. Peregrine took the paper back. This is a forgery. An easy accusation, said Lord Quioin. His voice was oily with offense. But the young lady is known to be dutiful. Perhaps she regrets her duty now that she has discovered a richer husband. Ianthe flinched. Peregrine did not raise his voice. He did not need to. You will not speak of my wife in that manner in my house. Lord Quioin's face reddened. Your house does not outrank the law. No, said Peregrine, but it has excellent doors, Mr. Orphan. The butler appeared as though conjured. His lordship is leaving. Lady Dorcas stepped forward. This is not finished. No, Peregrine said. It is not. You have brought a forged document into my house and accused my wife of dishonor. I will have the matter examined. Mr. Sallowby coughed. Your Grace. Perhaps if a private settlement. Leave, said Peregrine. There was no warmth in him now. No tutor with ink on his thumb. No gentle reader of poetry. This was the Duke of Carrowmere, and every person in the room understood it. Lady Dorcas understood it too, but hatred made her brave. Enjoy your rescued bride while you can, she said softly. Girls raised in shabby houses often find grand ones difficult. They mistake shelter for love. And when the Duke tires of charity, where will she go then? Ianthe went still. Peregrine moved, but Ianthe spoke first. I will go wherever I choose, she said. Lady Dorcas looked at her. The room became very quiet. Ianthe's hands were trembling, but her voice was not. That is the difference you never understood. Poverty made me afraid, yes. Duty made me stay. Love for my father made me endure you longer than I should have. But none of that made me yours. For the first time in all the years Ianthe had known her, Lady Dorcas had no immediate answer. Then she smiled. We shall see. They left with their forged paper, their injured pride, and their threat. When the carriage vanished down the avenue, Ianthe sat before the drawing-room fire and realized she was shaking. Peregrine knelt before her chair, not touching her. Ianthe. She forged my name. Yes. Or made father sign something and copied it. Or tricked me. I do not even know. She always finds a way to make the trap look like my own fault. It is not your fault. I know that here. She pressed a hand to her temple, then to her chest. Not yet here. He waited. That patience, more than anything, undid her. What if they can challenge the marriage? They cannot take the marriage from you, he said. That is not what this is truly for. She looked at him. Then what is it for? Shame, he said. Pressure. They want the county whispering that you were promised to Quion first, and chose me only because I was richer. If the scandal grows loud enough, they will ask for money to make it quiet, or they will try to make you so miserable here that you run. The room seemed to steady around the plainness of the explanation. It was ugly, but at least it had a shape. Our marriage is valid, he said. You are of age. You consented before witnesses. Whatever paper they hold cannot turn a free woman into Quion's property. She drew a long breath. Then why am I still afraid? Because fear does not obey evidence as quickly as courts do. She gave a broken little laugh. That sounds like poetry. It is only law with better manners. This time her laugh was real, though it trembled. He smiled, and she saw how tired he was, how angry. Not at her. For her. Peregrine, she said. Yes. Do not leave me alone with them if they come again. His face softened. Never. It was the first promise of his. She accepted without suspicion. The forged memorandum became the talk of the county before the week was out, because Lady Dorcas knew that scandal, once loosed, could sometimes accomplish what law could not. Whispers reached Carrowmere in folded notes and careful visits. The new duchess had been engaged elsewhere. The duke had stolen another man's bride. The girl had trapped him. The Tudor disguise had been part of a seduction. Lord Quion had been wronged. Lady Dorcas had been abandoned by an ungrateful stepdaughter after years of maternal care. At this last claim, Mrs. Valechester snorted so loudly in the linen room that 2 maids dropped a sheet. Ianthe tried to ignore the gossip. Some days she succeeded. Other days she walked through Carrowmere feeling the old Briarwick shame trailing behind her like a torn hem. She knew she had done nothing wrong, and yet old training is difficult to kill. Lady Dorcas had raised guilt like ivy around her. Even free, Ianthe sometimes found it climbing. Peregrine did not tell her to ignore it. He did not say gossip did not matter. He knew better. Instead, he set facts in motion. He sent for the vicar who had married them. He sent for Mr. Bellwether, who had first placed him at Briarwick House. He sent to London for samples of Ianthe's handwriting, properly dated. He sent a quiet note to a magistrate who owed his family no favors, and therefore could be trusted. And he sent, though Ianthe did not know it at first, for Sir Osric Voss. Her father arrived on a gray morning, thinner than she remembered, wrapped in a cloak too light for the weather, looking bewildered by the grandeur of Carrowmere, and ashamed of being bewildered. Ianthe met him in the hall. For one moment, they only stared at each other. Then he said, "My little star." It was what he had called her when she was small, before grief and debt and Dorcas had taught him to hide from the life he had failed to govern. Ianthe crossed the hall and took his hands. "Papa." He began to cry. Not loudly. Sir Osric did nothing loudly. Tears simply slipped down his tired face, and Ianthe, who had meant to ask why he had not protected her, found herself holding him before she could harden her heart enough to speak. "I failed you," he said. The words were so plain that she almost stepped back. "I knew Dorcas was hard," he whispered. "I knew the house was strained. I knew I had begun signing papers without reading them, because reading them frightened me. That was my cowardice, Ianthe. Not illness, not confusion, cowardice. But I did not know about Quion until after you had gone. She told me you had agreed. She told me I had forgotten. I forget so much now that I believed her. Ianthe closed her eyes. There was anger in her. There had to be. Love without anger would have been another lie. But beneath it was pity. And beneath pity, grief for the father he had been, and the father he had failed to remain. Did you sign anything about Lord Queon? She asked. No, never knowingly. I signed papers Dorcas brought me. Accounts. A note to the coal merchant. A letter to Thistlewade. I cannot swear what lay among them. His voice broke. I am sorry. Peregrine stood at a respectful distance, giving them the dignity of not being watched too closely. Sir Osric looked at him then, and with visible effort bowed. Your Grace, I have no right to ask anything, but is my daughter safe? Peregrine's answer was immediate. Yes. From Dorcas? Yes. Sir Osric looked back at Ianthe. And from you? The question entered the hall like a blade. Ianthe turned to Peregrine. He did not take offense. If anything, respect flickered across his face. That, he said quietly, is for her Grace to answer. Her Grace. He said it not as possession, but as recognition. Ianthe looked at the man she had married, the duke who had lied, the tutor who had seen her, the stranger who had given her a room of her own and never crossed its threshold uninvited. She thought of the poetry in the blue library, the candle accounts, the way he had knelt before her chair and not touched her when she shook, the way his anger made space around her instead of closing over her. Yes, she said, I am safe from him too. Something in Peregrine's face moved and was controlled. Sir Osric sagged with relief. That afternoon, they sat together in the blue library. Sir Osric dozed by the fire. Peregrine worked through letters at the far desk. Ianthe took up the green poetry book, more for comfort than reading. A folded paper slipped from the back cover. She frowned and picked it up. It was old. The creases had softened from being opened many times. On the outside, in a woman's hand, was written, For Peregrine, when he forgets he is loved. Ianthe looked across the room. Peregrine had gone still. That was my mother's, he said. I am sorry. I did not mean to pry. You did not. She held it out, but he did not take it. You may read it, he said. The letter was short enough to hurt. My dearest Peregrine, if the title ever finds you, remember this. The name will grow loud. People will bow to it, bargain with it, hunt it, flatter it, and confuse it for you. Do not believe them. Give your whole name only to the person who would have sat with you gladly when you had none. Ianthe read the last line twice. Give your whole name only to the person who would have sat with you gladly when you had none. Inside the front cover, the name had first been written in his mother's hand, and then beneath it, later, in his own, Peregrine Avelard. The whole name. She looked up. That is why you used Avel. My mother's name, he said. My smaller name. The one that belonged to me before the title. And you gave me the book before I knew. Yes. Why? Because you chose Mr. Avel in the library. Not Carrowmere. Not the gates. Not the income. You chose a man with ink on his cuff, because he promised not to sell you. I had no right to that choice. Not when you did not know the whole truth. But it mattered to me more than I can say. Ianthe closed the letter carefully and placed it back in the book. I am still angry you did not tell me. I know, but I understand better now. That is more than I deserve. Do not be noble. It is irritating. His mouth curved. Sir Osric snored gently by the fire. Outside the door, the house moved softly around them. Servants carrying coal, maids passing linen, distant footsteps in corridors that no longer felt quite so strange. For the first time since Lady Dorcas's visit, peace entered the room and stayed. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something green and stubborn beneath the cold soil. A beginning. The reckoning came at Lady Wexmere's spring assembly, because Lady Dorcas had chosen society as her weapon, and Peregrine, who had spent years avoiding society, understood that a public lie sometimes needed a public grave. Ianthe did not want to go. She admitted this in the blue library, while rain freckled the windows, and Mrs. Valechester supervised two maids bringing in the gown. It was not the grandest gown in Carrowmere. Ianthe had refused anything that made her feel like a decorated cake. The gown was deep green silk, simple in line, with sleeves that fell softly at the wrist and a narrow belt of gold thread. Against it, her mother's ring and Peregrine's old gold wedding band looked warmer than jewels. "I would rather face a leaking roof," she said. Peregrine stood near the mantel. "So would I. You like roofs. I dislike assemblies more." "Then why are we going?" "Because they have made a theater of your supposed shame. I mean to change the play." Mrs. Valchester, who approved of this sentence, pretended not to smile. Ianthe touched the gown. "What if they stare?" "They will." That was not comforting. "I thought truth might serve better." She looked at him. "And if Lady Dorcas produces the paper, then we produce the truth." "That sounds simple." "It will not be." "No." He came closer, stopping at the distance she still noticed and appreciated. "Ianthe, you do not need to prove yourself worthy of respect. You already are. Tonight is not to convince me, or this house, or anyone whose opinion deserves a place in your heart. Tonight is only to remove a weapon from cruel hands." She breathed slowly. "I will go," she said. At the assembly, every head turned. Of course it did. The new Duchess of Carrowmere entered on the Duke's arm, wearing green silk and no diamonds, her head high though her stomach had become a fist. The ballroom shone with candles and curiosity. Music faltered, then recovered. Fans lifted. Whispers moved like mice in the walls. Lady Dorcas stood near the card-room door, with Lord Queon and Mr. Sallowby. She wore silver tonight, a color that made her look colder than ever. When she saw Ianthe, satisfaction lit her face. She believed Ianthe had come to be humiliated. Peregrine bent his head slightly. "Breathe. I am, again." She almost laughed. "Do not tutor me in breathing. I am an excellent tutor. You are an outrageous liar." Also true. The laughter came, small but real, and with it her fear loosened enough for her to cross the room. Lady Wexmere, their hostess, had the hungry expression of a woman who could smell scandal before supper. "Your Graces," she said, "how delighted we are." "How brave of you," murmured a woman nearby, meaning the opposite. Ianthe turned to her. "I beg your pardon." The woman flushed. "Only that it must be difficult to appear when there is so much talk." "Then how kind of you to add less to it," Ianthe said. Peregrine coughed once. It might have been amusement. Lady Dorcas approached. "My dear Ianthe, green suits you. How fortunate that Carrowmere money can do what Briarwick taste could not." Ianthe felt the old blow land. Then she felt Peregrine beside her, silent and steady, not rescuing because she had not asked him to. "It is fortunate indeed," Ianthe said. "I have always believed improvement possible." Lady Dorcas's eyes sharpened. Lord Queon bowed over Ianthe's hand without touching it, because Peregrine's gaze made touching seem unwise. "Duchess, though I scarcely know whether to call you so while matters remain unsettled." Peregrine's voice was pleasant. "They do not." Mr. Sallowby appeared with his leather case. "Your Grace, this need not become unpleasant." "Then do not make it so," said Peregrine. But Lady Dorcas wanted unpleasantness. She wanted it like some women want applause. Within 10 minutes, she had guided the right people into the card-room. Lady Wexmere came. Lord Queon came. Mr. Sallowby came. So did the magistrate Peregrine had invited, though Lady Dorcas did not notice him at first. Sir Osric, pale but determined, entered on Mr. Orphan's arm. Mr. Bellwether came last, carrying a flat document box. The door closed. Peregrine stood at the head of the card table. "I believe," he said, "that a document has been circulated suggesting my wife consented to marry Lord Queon before she married me." Lady Dorcas smiled. "Not suggesting, proving." "Then let us examine proof." Mr. Sallowby removed the paper. "The memorandum bears Miss Voss's signature." "Duchess of Carrowmere," said Sir Osric unexpectedly from his chair. Ianthe turned. Her father's hands trembled on his cane, but his voice, though thin, had held. Lady Dorcas glared at him. "Osric, do not confuse matters." "For once," he said, "I think I shall try not to." Peregrine took the memorandum and laid it on the table. Beside it, He placed 3 letters in Ianthe's hand, dated before the supposed agreement, then 1 household receipt, then a page copied from the estate accounts at Briarwick. Last, he opened the green poetry book and removed the folded repair list Ianthe had written on the morning she fled. Lady Dorcas laughed. "Poetry, your grace? How touching." "Not poetry," he said. "Proof." The room sharpened. "Mr. Bellwether," Peregrine said. The small, spectacled man who had first sent Peregrine into Sir Osric's library stepped forward. Until that moment, he had looked like nothing more dangerous than an old collector of dusty books. Now he set down his document box, opened it, and became something else entirely. "For 40 years, Peregrine said, Mr. Bellwether has authenticated manuscripts, wills, letters, and family papers for half the collectors and courts in London. Lady Dorcas chose ink as her weapon. I have brought a man who knows ink." Mr. Bellwether examined the memorandum, then the letters, then the repair list. The room held its breath. "This signature is copied," he said. Lady Dorcas's smile flickered. Mr. Bellwether tapped the memorandum. "A real signature moves. This one performs. It is too careful in the places Miss Voss is quick, and too slow in the places she never pauses. This is not a woman signing her own name. This is someone drawing the shape of it." He placed Ianthe's true letter beside the forged paper so every person at the table could see the difference. There. Even an untrained eye can see it now. Her true hand runs forward. This false one creeps. Lord Quillan reddened. "Nonsense." The magistrate stepped forward. "I should like to see the document." Only then did Lady Dorcas understand that the room had not been arranged for gossip. It had been arranged for judgment. Mr. Sallowby began to sweat. Peregrine looked at Sir Osric. "Sir Osric, did you consent to a marriage between your daughter and Lord Quillan?" Sir Osric gripped his cane. "No. I was told after she vanished that I had forgotten giving consent. I had not. I may be ill. I may be weak. But I would remember selling my child." Ianthe's eyes filled. Lady Dorcas snapped. "You signed the supporting account." "I signed what you placed before me," he said, "because I trusted my wife. That was my sin, not my daughter's." The room shifted. Sympathy, that fickle animal, began to move away from Lady Dorcas. Peregrine turned to Mr. Sallowby. "Who instructed you to draw up this memorandum?" The solicitor dabbed his forehead. Lady Dorcas brought the particulars. "And who provided the signature?" "I was told Miss Voss had signed separately due to delicacy." "By whom?" Silence. "By whom?" said the magistrate. Mr. Sallowby looked at Lady Dorcas. There are moments when a lie remains standing, only because everyone is too polite to point at it. This was the moment politeness died. Lady Dorcas's face hardened. "You are all very dramatic. I did what was necessary to preserve a family. The girl was nothing at Briarwick. Nothing. I found her a secure match. She should have thanked me." Ianthe stepped forward. For a second, she was back in the fading drawing room, cheek burning, hearing that a woman without money did not get to say no. Then she was not there. She was in green silk at Carrowmere's reckoning, with her father at her side, and her husband behind her, and her own voice ready at last. "You did not find me a match," she said. "You found a buyer. You did not preserve a family. You fed on one. You took my father's weakness, my mother's house, my labor, my silence, and then, when nothing else remained, you tried to take my name too. You were wrong about one thing, Lady Dorcas. A woman without money can still say no. It may cost her dearly. People may refuse to hear it. They may forge papers over it and call it duty. But no remains no, even when written in a shaking hand, even when spoken by a woman no one values. Even then, no one spoke. Then Peregrine, Duke of Carrowmere, bowed to his wife before the whole room. Not a small bow, not a private nod, a full, formal, public bow of respect. "My Duchess," he said. The room understood. Lady Dorcas was finished, before the magistrate even took the forged paper into custody. Lord Quillan withdrew his claim with unseemly speed. Mr. Sallowby began explaining himself to anyone who would listen, which was no one. Sir Osric wept quietly. Lady Wexmere looked as if she had been handed the best scandal of her life and was trying not to appear grateful, and Ianthe stood very still, because something old and tight inside her had finally broken. Not her heart, the chain around it. They returned to Carrowmere under a sky full of stars. For once, no rain followed them. The carriage lamps swayed softly. Sir Osric slept in the opposite corner, exhausted by courage. Ianthe sat beside Peregrine, not across from him, though neither of them remarked upon the change. After a long while she said, "You bowed to me." "Yes." "In front of everyone." "Yes." "Why?" His answer came quietly. "Because they needed to see what I see." She looked out at the dark road. "And what is that?" "My equal." The word entered her gently, and stayed. At the house, Sir Osric was helped to his rooms. Mrs. Valechester, who had waited up despite pretending she had not, received the news with ferocious satisfaction, and immediately ordered broth, tea, and a celebratory amount of toast. Ianthe could not sleep. Neither, it seemed, could Peregrine. She found him in the blue library near midnight, the green poetry book open before him, though he was not reading. The fire had burned low. Candlelight warmed the side of his face. Without the world watching, without servants bowing or enemies accusing, he looked suddenly like the tutor again, ink on his thumb, weariness in his shoulders, a man who had spent too many years wondering whether he could be loved without his title. Ianthe stood in the doorway. "Are you sad, stubborn, or pretending not to be either?" He looked up, startled. She held up the book. "Your mother's letter." His face softened. "All three, I suspect." She came in and closed the door. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "I forgive you." He went very still. "For not telling me before the chapel," she said. "I am still allowed to think it was wrong." It was, and arrogant. Yes, and foolish, increasingly clear. "But I understand why you feared the whole name. I understand why you wanted to be chosen without it." His hand rested on the open page. "I should have trusted you with the choice." "Yes, I am sorry. I know." She crossed the room and sat in the chair opposite him. "The trouble is that I did choose you." His breath changed. "Not wisely, perhaps," she continued. "Not with enough information. Not in circumstances any sensible woman would recommend. But in the library at Briarwick, when you said respect may be enough to begin with, I chose the man who said that. The man who saw me. The man who offered a door and did not push me through it. Finding out he was a duke frightened me. It angered me, but it did not erase him." Peregrine closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the guardedness was gone. "I have loved you," he said, "with increasing inconvenience since the day you argued with a grocer's bill in the margin of a Greek grammar." That surprised a laugh from her. "That was the moment? You were magnificent. I was furious over sixpence." "Exactly." She smiled, and this time did not hide it. He rose, slowly enough that she could stop him if she wished, and came to stand before her chair. "Ianthe," he said, "I will not ask more than you wish to give. I meant that. I mean it still. But I would like to court my wife, if she permits it. Properly this time. With truth. With patience. With no hidden gates at the end of the road." Her heart, traitorous and wise, opened. "What would courting involve?" "Poetry. Certainly. Convenient for you. Walks. Arguments over household economies. Perhaps flowers. Though I shall ask first whether you object to waste." "I do not object to flowers. I object to pretending flowers are more important than bread." "An excellent distinction." "What else?" His voice lowered. "Learning what makes you happy when you are no longer busy surviving." She looked at him then, and felt the full tenderness and terror of being known. "I do not know yet," she said. "Then we shall find out. Slowly, slowly." The word was a gift. She stood. They were very near now, near enough that the candlelight touched both their faces. "Your mother wrote that you should give your whole name only to someone who would have sat with you gladly when you had none." "Yes, I would have," Ianthe said. "I did." His eyes shone. She touched the cover of the book between them. "Peregrine Avelard," she said, the whole name, softly. He looked as though she had put a hand on his heart. Then, because she wished to, because no one had bought this moment, or arranged it, or forged it into being, she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was not a grand kiss, not the sort ballads ruin with too much description. It was gentle at first, almost a question. Then his hand, careful even now, came to rest at her shoulder, and the question became an answer. Outside the library windows, the night lay clear over Carrowmere. Inside, beside the low fire and the old green book, the tutor and the duchess, the man and the woman, the smaller name and the whole one, found each other at last without disguise. They did not have a second wedding, though Lady Wexmere suggested one, because society disliked missing anything. Ianthe refused. "I have been married once," she said, and found it quite sufficient. Peregrine, who had learned the pleasure of agreeing with his wife in public, said, "The Duchess has spoken." Lady Dorcas did not prosper. Forgery, even when dressed as family duty, is still forgery when the ink is dry and the witness is honest. Lord Queon denied everything and vanished from county dinners. Mr. Sallowby lost clients. Lady Dorcas removed to Bath and sent letters. Ianthe did not answer. The first letter made her shake. The second made her angry. The third she placed, unopened, into the library fire. "Do you want me to stop them arriving?" Peregrine asked. "Not yet." "Why?" She watched the paper curl into flame. "Because each time I choose not to open one, I believe myself a little more." Carrowmere changed under her by small acts repeated until they became custom. The extra food went where hunger lived. The servants were paid fairly and on time. Waste was trimmed, not joy. And the West Nursery, unused for 2 generations, became a schoolroom for village children twice a week, because Ianthe said, books locked away in rich houses grew vain. Peregrine objected only to the phrase, vain books. "You wound them," he said. "They need humility. Books are innocent. Some books know exactly what they are doing." A year after the secret wedding, Carrowmere held its spring assembly, and this time Ianthe entered the ballroom not as a scandal, but as its mistress. She wore no crown, no excessive diamonds, nothing Lady Dorcas would have understood as victory. Only green silk, her mother's small ring, and the old gold band Peregrine had placed on her finger in the leaking chapel. At midnight, Peregrine found her on the terrace. The garden smelled of wet roses. Lamps glowed along the path. Beyond them, Carrowmere's windows shone warmly, not like the cold display of the first night, but like a house awake and glad of itself. "Do you remember the first time you came through those gates?" he asked. "I remember wanting to hit you with the poetry book, a reasonable impulse. I also remember thinking, if you were a duke, Dorcas could not reach me. And now?" Ianthe looked at the lit windows, the servants laughing faintly somewhere below, her father asleep in a good chair, the village children who would come on Thursday to read in the West Nursery, and the library where the green book waited on the table. "Now I think she cannot reach me because I am no longer hers," she said. "Not because you are a duke." He took that in with the seriousness it deserved. Then he said, "And whose are you?" She turned to him. "My own." His smile was slow and beautiful. "Yes. And yours," she added, "when I choose." He bowed over her hand, as he had bowed in the card-room before those who had doubted her. "Then I am honored whenever I am chosen." The house behind them glowed. The road beyond the gates disappeared into the dark, the same road that had carried her away from Briarwick in fear and toward Carrowmere in ignorance. She thought of that girl often, the girl with no gloves, no flowers, no plan beyond escape. She loved her now. She was proud of her. She had said no when no was all she had, and that one small word had been the hinge upon which the whole world turned. Dear listener, wherever you are tonight, I hope Ianthe's story follows you gently into sleep, because this was never only a story about a hidden duke, or a cruel stepmother, or a secret marriage in a rain-soaked chapel. It was a story about the difference between being rescued and being respected. It was about a woman who had been used for so long that kindness frightened her, and a man who had been bowed to for so long that he no longer knew whether anyone could see him standing behind the title. It was about a smaller name, a whole name, and the courage it takes to offer both. Perhaps somewhere in your own life there has been a house like Briarwick, a place that asked too much and thanked too little. Perhaps there has been a voice, like Lady Dorcas's, telling you that without money, beauty, power, or permission, you do not get to say no. If so, I hope you remember Ianthe tonight. I hope you remember that no remains no, even when spoken softly, even when spoken late, even when your hand is shaking. And I hope you remember Peregrine too, not because he was a duke, but because he learned that love is not proven by possession. It is proven by patience, by truth, by standing near enough to protect and far enough to let the beloved choose, by bowing when the world expects you to command. Sleep well tonight. May you dream of warm libraries, rain on old stone, lamps left burning in safe windows, and a green book open to the page where your whole name is written with love. If this story warmed you, leave a like, subscribe for the next long Regency romance sleep story, and tell me in the comments which moment stayed with you most. The secret chapel wedding, the servants calling him your grace, the forged paper exposed, or the old poetry book with his true name inside. Thank you for spending this quiet hour at Carrowmere. Until the next story, good night.